I made a short video a few minutes ago about the felling of the sycamore tree and the sentencing of the two people who did this, who've now fallen out apparently, to 4 years in prison each for an act of criminal damage. A magnificent and historic tree, yes, a landmark beloved by many, certainly, but at the end of the day, it was a tree. And I personally think it was a very important tree, by the way. That isn't the point of my earlier video, or indeed of this video. In Britain, meanwhile, people have received lesser sentences for crimes that directly injure, violate, or end lives. And these are cases of burglars, violent offenders, even some convicted killers walking free within comparable or shorter period, people who are harassing people, people who are victimizing people, people who are what is it now where they are anyway, following people. I can't remember the word for it now. This is not to dismiss the seriousness of destroying heritage. It's to question the profound inconsistency of our criminal justice system and to highlight how it is increasingly shaped by public outcry, by media frenzy, by political fashion, rather than principles of proportionate justice. Consider burglary. In many recent cases, burglars who violate the sanctity of a person's home, often traumatizing their victims, have received suspended sentences or prison terms of less than 2 years. And a quick search of court reports shows people convicted of burglary, even with previous convictions, given community orders or 18-month sentences. I am all for I'm all for kindness and taking care of criminals and being mindful of their background. But you know, when you look at one recent well publicized example of sentencing dissonance, the burglary with violence, a man in England who broke into a home, threatened the occupant with a knife and stole property, was sentenced to 3 years, slightly more than some others, but still less than felling a sycamore tree. Causing death by dangerous driving. A driver who killed a pedestrian while speeding intoxicated received 3 years and 6 months. Serious assault, some grievous bodily harm convictions with life-altering injuries have drawn 2 or 3 year sentences. Now, these cases reveal a system that routinely shows clemency. I'm all for clemency for offences against a person, especially when there's no media spotlight, but it reacts harshly when public outrage demands symbolic punishment for people who write tweets which are considered offensive. Look, absolutely, one shouldn't be inciting violence, but, political protest. Consider the recent policing of Palestine Action supporters. Over 70 individuals arrested under counter-terrorism legislation for showing support for a newly prescribed group, and in some cases merely for carrying signs or chanting slogans. Well, while no court yet has handed out long sentences for these arrests, the mere fact that people face years in prison for political association with zero violence should give any defender of civil liberties pause. When protest itself is criminalized and potentially punished more severely than violent offences, we must ask what values are actually being defended. And it's instructive to compare felling a tree over 4 years. Felling that tree over 4 years. Felling the trees in my garden, nothing. And somebody's very kindly pointed out that clearly I have a bad relationship with my neighbours. The neighbours who actually came over the fence and felled the trees were new tenants who'd hardly been in place, and I just happened to be away. And the actual owners, my actual neighbours, are mortified, as are the estate agents. So before people write comments, they should think quite carefully what they're actually saying, because it's fairly aggressive stuff that's being written in the comments sometimes. Now, I know not everybody's called Tony Dick, but actually, I think some people might be Tony Dick under a pseudonym. I have a strong suspicion that Tony Dick operates under multiple names. But non-violent protests supporting Palestine Action, arrests, and possible long terrorism sentences are almost certainly threatened. Burglary, however, often less than 2 years. Manslaughter, sometimes 3 or 4 years. These disparities expose a system of justice, and we should be proud of the justice in this country, a system of justice driven less by objective harm than by subjective outrage. The tree fellers became national villains, so the Crown Court punished them harshly. Meanwhile, a burglar traumatizing a family in their own home elicits no newspaper campaign and so receives relative leniency. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the felling of the tree was an irrelevance. I think it was a great act of harm to an area, and it could have caused immeasurable damage to a site of historic interest. But justice should never be administered by popularity, by a popularity contest or a fad. It should rest on 3 principles: proportionality, that the punishment fits the crime in its objective harm, that it's consistent, that similar crimes receive similar punishments, that it is independent, that sentencing is insulated from public hysteria and political opportunism. And when these principles collapse, justice itself collapses into theatre. It becomes spectacle for the crowd. Is an historic tree worth protecting? Yes. Yes. Should felling it carry a penalty? Absolutely, certainly. But when our courts punish that act more harshly than killing someone on the road or terrorizing a person in their own home or violently attacking a stranger, then they are sending out a chilling message that moral outrage, if sufficiently photogenic, outweighs human life and dignity. And that is the point. And moreover, the threat of draconian sentences for those merely supporting a controversial political cause reveals the state's willingness to use the justice system as an instrument of political discipline and coercion. That's not justice. That is crowd-pleasing authoritarianism, and we see it in Russia. If our society cannot uphold respect for human life over property, if it cannot distinguish symbolic harm from physical injury, then our claims to civilization are getting very thin. Indeed, we are on very thin ice. It's time to demand sentencing reform. And we need sentencing guidelines that enforce real proportionality, valuing human life and personal security over property damage or symbolic offense. We need political courage to resist the tabloid front page demanding blood. And above all, we need to remember that justice is not vengeance. And I think we've crossed that line. It's not performance. It is the sober, principled application of law to protect what matters most: human life, human dignity, human freedom. When whistleblowers risk their careers to say that something is wrong and then find they themselves are attacked and the law does nothing and the government does nothing, there's something gone wrong. When the justice system is persecuting innocent people and not protecting them, something has gone wrong. And if we cannot put it right, then our courts will continue to reflect not justice, but fashion. Not principle, but whim. And that is a dangerous path for any democracy to walk.